Okay, dear friends, welcome to the German language program of DSIL's Academy. Today, we are going to deal with a little difficult unit in the German grammar. I don't want to frighten you when I say it a little difficult, but it's not that easy to understand this part of the German language. This is known as Konjunktiv, and many students they call it Konjunktiv I and Konjunktiv II, or in their language they say it is K1 and K2. Now, before we start with conjunctive, we have to go a little backward and to get some basic information about the different types of sentences in any language for that matter. In any language, there are mainly three different types of expressions. Also wenn Sie den ersten Satz lesen, man unterscheidet in der deutschen Sprache drei Modi. This Modi, it has nothing got to do with our Prime Minister. Modi just means the different ways of expressions. In German it is known as Aussageweisen. Aussagen, to say, express. Weise, ways, different ways of expression. There are three different ways of expressions in the German language. These are known as indicative, imperative and conjunctive. Now you have to understand what is an indicative, what are indicative sentences. Indicative sentences have to do with real sentences, or they are concerned with reality. In German this is known as Wirklichkeit. For example, questions, answers, statements. Examples: Wie heißt du? Woher kommst du? Wo liegt Indien? Indien liegt in Asien. Indian is in Asia. These are all statements or questions, but they have something got to do with the reality, Wirklichkeit. So they all belong to the indicative type. The second type is imperative. Imperative sentences always give a instruction or sometimes a befehl, a command. And then comes what we know as conjunctive. Conjunctive, usually when we talk about conjunctive, immediately you should register that this has little to do with Wirklichkeit. Wirklichkeit says reality sentences. Look at these two sentences. Indien liegt in Asien. India is lying, or India is situated in Asia. Or im Sommer ist es warm in Indien. In summer it is quite hot in India. So these are indicative sentences, indicative Sätze, and they always express eine Wirklichkeit, a reality. At the same time, imperative sentences always express a suggestion or an instruction or sometimes even a command. Example, stehen Sie früh morgens auf. Get up early in the morning. It can be a suggestion, it can be instruction. But fahren Sie nicht so schnell. Don't drive so fast. And if the tone is high, it can also be considered to be a command. You do what I am telling you. So all such sentences belong to the imperative category. Now, as you told earlier, K1 is a little different from these types of sentences, and it has little to do with the reality, with the Wirklichkeit. There are exceptions, we will come to that later, where K1 are real sentences, but mostly the function of K1 is to express or to make indirect speech. Now, what is an indirect speech? Somebody tells me something and I tell it to the third person. So when I talk to that particular person, it is not a direct thing that I am giving him. I only tell him what he told me. That means, if you look at the German sentence, then you will understand it better. Die indirekte Rede ist die Wiedergabe fremder Aussagen. The indirect speech is only the reconstruction of things which are not known to me, about which I am not sure. Der Sprecher vermittelt nur, was ihm gesagt worden ist. The speaker, that is the speaker who gives the indirect speech, he gives only what was told to him, and he is not sure about whether it is a fact or a truth. For example, if somebody says, I am 38 years old, and I will tell the third person, he told me that he is 38 years old. But whether he is 38 or under 38 or much more, I am not sure about it. I am not committing myself to that. I am just telling what he told me. Such sentences are known as indirect speech sentences or indirect Rede. Look at the Beispielsatz. Sagte, ich habe wenig Geld. He told, I have little money. That's what he is telling me. Now, if we make it into an indirect speech, sagte mir, he told me, dass wenig Geld habe. He told me that he has only little money, but whether it is true or false, I am not committing. So this is a basic function of indirect speech. Now, if you look at this sentence, sagte mir, dass wenig Geld habe, you might wonder, is a third person, and naturally the finite verb, the finite verb has to be hat. Why it is habe? That habe shows that the sentence itself is in indirect speech. To that we will come later, how we will derive the K1 form of different verbs. Coming back to this sentence, sagte mir, dass wenig Geld habe. Here we have a connector, das, and the verb is at the end. The same sentence in the indirect speech you can construct without a connector, namely, sagt mir, habe wenig Geld. The first sentence is geschriebene Sprache, written language, and the second sentence is gesprochene Sprache, spoken language. But for our needs, what we have to keep in mind is that K1, we can construct K1 or indirectly Sätze mit oder ohne Konnektoren, with or without connectives. Both are right. Now we will have to see, wie leitet man K1 ab? We know now, we have the basic information about K1, what is the use of K1, where it is used. But how to derive these forms, that we have to look. See, K1 is always, whether it is weak verbs or strong verbs or regular verbs or irregular verbs, it is derived from the present infinitive. K1 wird von dem Präsens der schwachen und unregelmäßigen oder unregelmäßigen Verben abgeleitet. Ableiten is to derive. For example, look at the sentence, look at the table. Ich kaufe. Ending is a or e. But when it comes to du, it is du kaufest. In the present tense, it is du kaufst. But in the K1, it is not kaufst, it is kaufest, and an additional e comes. Similarly, RCS kaufe. In the present tense, it was kauft. Here it is kaufe. Wir kaufen, no change. Ihr kaufet and Sie kaufen. If you look at the endings, it is a E, EST, E, EN, ET and EN. Now, what is the most striking difference here between the present tense and the K1? In present, the air form and ear form was the same. But in K1, the ich form and air form are the same. That you have to be very careful about it, that you have to imprint it here. Otherwise, mistakes will happen when you write. Ich form and air form are the same. But wir form and the C form, the formal C form, they are also the same, like in the presents. So this is how we derive the K1 of any verb. Similarly, go through these examples. I will read it. Please repeat with me. Ich nehme, du nehmest, nehme, wir nehmen, ihr nehmet, sie nehmen. Ich habe, du habest, habe, wir haben, ihr habet, sie haben. And in the beginning of your language learning, you have learned to derive different forms of sign. Ich bin, du bist, ist, etc. But the K1 form of sign is entirely different. You will have to learn it by heart. It is ich sei, du seiest, sei, wir seien, ihr seiet, sie sein. So please make sure that you are sure about the K1s of haben and sein. And as I told you earlier, I am repeating once again, the first person and third person endings are same. The first person and third person endings are the same. So that's how you derive K1s of verbs. Now before going further, you also have to see along with it, how is K2 form derived? It is a little different from that of K1s. K2 is derived from the Präteritum or the past tense of regelmäßig and unregelmäßige Verben, regular and irregular verbs, or schwachen and starken Verben, strong and weak verbs. That means if you take any infinitive, take the Präteritum, make the past tense. For example, the Präteritum of wohnen is wohnte. Ich wohnte. Du wohntest. Wohnten. Ihr wohntet. Wir wohnten. Sie wohnten. But when it comes to strong nouns, for example, common, the Präteritum, the past tense of common is kam. Take the Präteritum or take the past tense and put a umlaut to the first vowel. You have K2 and put the endings e, est, e, etc. I repeat once again. If it is a irregular verb, for example, common is an irregular verb, common, calm. Take the past tense, put an umlaut in the first vowel and add the endings. Example is given here. Ich käme, du kämest, käme, wir kämen, ihr kämet, sie kämen. Sein, Präteritum, past tense, war, umlaut. Ich wäre, du wärest, wäre, wir wären, ihr wäret, sie wären. Haben, Präteritum, past tense, hatte, umlaut. Ich hätte, du hättest, hätte, wir hätten, ihr hättet, sie hätten. We are coming back to K1. Look at the sentence. Ich fragte ihn, ob genug Geld habe. Earlier, we have told that in the indirect speech, you can make the indirect speech with or without connectives. That's why we have taken this sentence again. If it is an indirect Fragesatz, if it is a question, a connector is a must. You will be able to make a sentence only with the help of a connector. Example, ich fragte ihn, ob genug Geld habe. You cannot make a sentence like ich fragte ihm. Hence, if you please keep in mind, for a Fragesatz, if you want an indirect Fragesatz, indirect question sentence, then you make it sure that there is a connector. Now we are remaining with K1. K1, we told earlier, it has little to do with Wirklichkeit sentences, and it is always a non-real sentence or indirect speech. Here we are doing a few sentences which are a little different in their status. For example, K1 can express a hope. Not only indirect speech, it can express a hope sentence. Es lebe unser Land. Let our country flourish. Lebe. It is a K1. It has got to do with a Hoffnung, even though not with reality. It is somewhere between the reality and irreality. Or the sentence, Gott sei Dank. There also you have this K1. And in some cases where, like in recipe, cooking recipe, or if you buy something and look at the Gebrauchsanweisungen, instructions for use, there also you will find this K1. It is nothing got to do with indirect speech. There are different types of sentences. For example, man nehme 2 Löffel Salz. What they mean is, take 2 spoons of salt. An imperative such is not made here. They are trying to express, normally one takes 2 tablespoons. They don't want to instruct you. They don't want to command you. So they are avoiding this imperative sense, and as a usual instruction, as a common instruction, this K1 is used in cooking recipes. Man nehme 2 Löffel Salz, or man nehme täglich 3-mal eine Tablette. That means you have to take the tablet 3 times a day. So K1, remember, indirect speech, cooking recipes, instructions for use, and Hoffnung, to express hope. These are the main functions, main uses of Konjunktiv I. Now, have a look at this sentence. Sagt, ich bin krank. That means he says to me, he says not I am sick, but he says he is sick. Sagt, ich bin krank. Indirect speech will be, sagt, dass krank sei. He says that he is sick. I don't know. I am not making any commitment. Here you can use the indirect speech without the connector. Sagt, sei krank. Both are correct. Coming to the sentence, Sie sagen, wir haben ein Auto. They say, we have a car. And I am trying to put it into the indirect speech. Sie sagen, dass sie ein Auto hätten. Hätten is actually K2. You might wonder why instead of K1 we are using K2 here. The reason is this. Here the K1 for wir and the present tense both are the same. Remember haben. Ka eins will be ich habe, du habest, er habe, wir haben. Ka eins is the same. Ka eins is haben. But in the present tense also, it is ich habe, du hast, er hat, wir haben. So there is a clash. The present tense of wir and the Ka eins of wir, it happens to be the same. So we will not be able to know which is the present tense and which is Ka eins. In such cases where the present tense form and the Ka eins form are the same, we take Ka zwei. Hence, Sie sagen, dass Sie ein Auto hätten. That means the Ka eins form ist es lautet gleich mit dem Präsens. In such cases we take the Ka zwei. Dann gebraucht man Ka zwei Form. Another example. Sagt, ich kam zu dir gestern. Sagt, ich kam zu dir gestern. He says, I came to you yesterday. I came to visit you yesterday. That is the meaning behind it. The tense Zeitform in the direct speech is Präteritum, past tense. Ich kam. So if the tense in the direct speech is past tense, there is a rule that the tense in the indirect speech has to be perfect. Hence, the indirect speech will be sagt, dass gestern zu mir gekommen sei. Please remember, if the tense in the direct speech is Präteritum, past tense, you have to build the indirect speech in the perfect form. So the rule is I have given here, direct rede, direct speech Präteritum, indirect rede is in perfect.